before. So I think the insiders are bailing out. When you're talking $234 billion, there are dead bodies involved with them. And I started a cloud computing company that does cloud computing for law firms. That meeting, which was pure chance, sort of changed the direction of my life. Cryptocurrency and blockchain need law, and law needs cryptocurrency and blockchain. I'm a fan of technology. It had correspondent relationships with a US bank, and the US bank actually cut the correspondent relationship because of money laundering concerns. I think 234 billion, I mean, I don't know what the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market is, but it's gotta be around that, or the amount of money laundered puts the cryptocurrency markets or any individual coins, maybe other than Bitcoin, to shame. You need to accept reality and deal with it.
Hello, beautiful people. We are live with Gordon Einstein. Gordon, where are you? How are you doing?
I am very good. Good morning from not so sunny Los Angeles, or Student City, Los Angeles. It's a little overcast, but good morning.
Gordon, it's very unfortunate that we do this hangout because I've seen you first as a live speaker, and that's fantastic because you are one of the speakers who are really great energy, and it's definitely fun to listen. But maybe you can still keep some of the good vibes here. Let me ask the first question, because before we jump into the big topic that we want to discuss, I think it's definitely interesting to hear a bit about your background and maybe your way into Bitcoin. I saw your current venture is crypto lawyer partners. What is this about? And I think since it's your main topic, raising funds in the US, you can maybe also just talk a little bit in the beginning about that. And also, of course, I mean, the big question is always about when is security tokens a thing? What's the status quo, utility, security? Very interested.
Got it. Sure. That's a lot. I like it. So I'm a U.S. attorney. I'm licensed in California, though I have somewhat of a worldwide practice. I graduated and became a lawyer quite some time ago in the mid-90s. Practiced for several years doing business transactions, tax, and estate planning. Then I found my inner nerd, if you like, left law for a long time, and worked in computer technology, and I started a cloud computing company that does cloud computing for law firms. So I did that for several years, over a decade, I'd say. And then by pure chance, in 2014, I met the founders of Distributed Lab, who you probably know is one of the bigger, at least one of the best, blockchain development houses in Ukraine. That meeting, which was pure chance, sort of changed the direction of my life. Ended up going to Ukraine. Got to work on my Russian language skills, which I'm still working on, and gradually became interested in crypto and cryptocurrencies and blockchain. It didn't really hit until I taught myself how to become an amateur programmer, then went back to Ukraine, then listened to all the presentations, and then it sort of struck me. Pretty recently, within the past couple of years, it happened that I came to the realization that cryptocurrency and blockchain need law, and law needs cryptocurrency and blockchain. So I re-engaged my legal practice to full time. And since that point, I've been just exclusively serving clients worldwide in their cryptocurrency and blockchain ventures. And then to get to the next point you raised, it's very important. I want all these ventures to succeed, the ones that are pushing forward the state of the art. And in order to succeed, they need to raise capital, and 99% of the time. And the best source of capital right now on the planet is the United States, because it's the largest economy and it hasn't banned ICOs. China, I think, will be a worthy contender, or maybe even first, but they have to open up their markets a little bit. And the rest of the world is, well, great, it's still kind of fragmented. So part of what I'm doing when I go abroad, or when I travel, is explain to blockchain and crypto ventures how they can raise capital in the United States and do it legally, so that the SEC and all these attorneys don't kill them, basically, because there's been a lot of irresponsible behavior and on the part of our industry, unfortunately, that I'm trying to work on. But also the SEC and other agencies have been too conservative and not done a good job communicating, though they are doing better now. I have to give them some credit. So I'm trying to provide very detail-oriented, clear instructions on how to raise capital legally. I'm not just doing FUD, just trying to make it all happen. And then to your question about security tokens, Security tokens are a great idea. I think utility tokens are 100% a thing, and I don't think we're going to see. It doesn't make sense. No matter what people are saying, it doesn't make sense to claim that every token is a security. That doesn't. It's not even legal. That doesn't fall within the definition of law. I mean, not everything is security. My glasses and my phone aren't securities. Some things are commodities, and the fact that something is not a security doesn't mean that it's not regulated. It just means that it's regulated somewhere else or as something else. So it's a mistake to pretend that something that's not a security is a security. And if the SEC does its job when it receives an application for a non-security trying to register, it should bounce that application. It should not allow it. Now, are security tokens a possible good thing? Absolutely. There's two variants of that. There's the idea of taking existing forms of securities, like stocks or shares, and tokenizing them. I call that a tokenized security. But then there's the idea that you can make an economic contract that qualifies as a security, as an investment contract, but isn't a traditional security. I'd say that's a security token. It's a new kind of thing that happens to be a security. So there's two parallel paths that the naming is subtly different, but it makes a whole world of practical difference. I think it is a future we're heading into. It's one of several futures that's going to coexist along with payment tokens, utility tokens, and hybrid tokens, sort of the Swiss model regulation, maybe the Maltese model regulation. So the complexity I'm seeing is when someone tries to make a token that both has utility function and also is a security, that from a theoretical point of view sounds great, and that's what I think we should be able to do. But from a tax and compliance perspective, it's really tough, because that means that every time someone uses that token to access the service, maybe they owe tax, because if the token went up in value when they use it, maybe it's just like a security that goes up in value. Maybe using it is the equivalent of selling it, and they would owe tax every time they use that token. I mean, that's something people don't really think about, but it's a possibility. And I can see the IRS or other taxing agencies asserting that position. So when it comes to security tokens, I think it's like I said before, the crypto and blockchain need to catch up to law. The law needs to catch up to crypto and blockchain. And they both need to push each other forward. So I'm excited to be part of that. But there's a lot of work to be done. We're not where we need to be yet, especially in the United States, especially in any large jurisdiction. The law is not where it needs to be yet. I mean, maybe Malta and Gibraltar and Estonia, Caymans, and all these other countries are kind of pushing it, but that's their traditional offshore jurisdiction mentality, which is useful for them. It's useful for the world, but we need large economies and large, complex legal systems moving over as well.
Mm-hmm. Your answer was very interesting. However, they were also it's not so satisfying maybe for some viewers, because there were also a lot of questions in the answer. Right. Is this really the problem at the moment, that there is really just no answer nowhere really? Maybe also, for example, why is China cracking down so much? Do you think they're afraid? And also, I think we also have to remind ourselves that this is so new. It's just a couple of years old, and it's very disruptive. Do you think this will come to an end at some point, that this ICO thing, there will either be a very, very worldwide, a very clear answer to this, or it will be more open and more flexible, and there will be more possibilities for everyone?
That's very many very good questions. So let me try to do those in order. I agree that the answer I gave is not emotionally satisfying. It's part of that lack of satisfaction is what's driving me to push the state of the art, so that the answer does become satisfying. Now, there's many things that aren't satisfying. I'm not satisfied that we don't have a cure for cancer yet. I'm not satisfied that we haven't colonized Mars yet. I'm not satisfied that robotics, though it's making improvements, isn't where it should be yet. And I'm not
flying cars is the worst.
I'm not satisfied that when I want to go to Ukraine and I'm in Los Angeles, it's there's no direct flights and the flights are slow. I mean, there's many things that aren't satisfying. And, I've talked about this in some of my presentations. The world and humanity should be progressing much faster than it is. And there's several systemic constraints that are holding us back. And my point of view is that crypto and blockchain, when deployed correctly, can actually alleviate a lot of those problems, can make things better, and can make humanity progressed faster. But yes, it is frustrating. There's two things that make it even more frustrating. It's the fact that technology moves very quickly. I mean, Satoshi came out with this paper in 2008, and 10 years sounds like a lot, but it's not really that long in the history of humanity. And of course, it took time for his initial versions to come out, and things for people to realize what the heck was going on. But technology is moving very fast now. It's metastasizing and changing with blockchain and crypto all the time. You got EOS versus Ether. You have all these battles, and no one knows where it's going to go. So you have this technology or philosophy moving at light speed, and you have law, which by definition is reactive. I mean, you have to get law voted in, or someone has to pass. The judge has to decide something. It's rare for things to be proactive with law. I mean, the law doesn't automatically adapt. At its best, you have something like Malta, where you have the financial regulators and the elected government working together to be proactive. Even when they're proactive, they're having to place a vote. It's not like the law changes and then they ratify it after the fact. So it's always behind. And some justice, and maybe it's Holmes or I forget who, said, the history of the law is not logic, it's experience. So law is not proactive. It's not necessarily logical. It's reactive to events that come up. And in order to be reactive, there has to be something that happens first. So we're now slowly getting law. And of course, you got people grandstanding, and you got entrenched interests. And we'll talk about that with Danske Bank. You've got people who don't understand what the heck they're talking about. It's almost like that Mark Zuckerberg Senate hearing where the senators didn't understand the darn thing, and they're trying to grill Mark Zuckerberg, who clearly dropped the ball with Cambridge Analytica, but they didn't even know how to ask the right questions. And so, yes, it's frustrating. Not to mention, you have this global diversity of law. And on one hand, it's good because you can pick and choose jurisdictions and go to a jurisdiction that's friendly. On the other hand, it stinks because if I'm an entrepreneur, I should have one kind of law I'm dealing with for the whole world. It really actually doesn't make sense that you have all this diversity of law. It doesn't add anything. Maybe it adds a little bit of experimentation value, but it'd be far better if, assuming we had good law, if we had global law. So I knew what the law of contracts was in Belize, Russia, in the US, in Canada, in Chad, in Australia. I didn't have to, if I could only figure it out once and then apply that rule globally, that'd be great. We're not in that system. Part of what I think can happen with blockchain and crypto and these models is I think we can push a global law or at least global standards that are as good as law. But that's a decades-long battle, but every little bit of that helps. There's another dynamic here, which is, you have Maltese company law, you have French company law, you have Russian company law, you have Mexican company law. So all these countries have national law about making companies. In the United States, we have California company law, we have New York company law, we have Florida company law. Every state has its own company law. And if you form in one state, say California, and you do business in another state, say Nevada, it's complex, and you have to hire lawyers and accountants and all this other stuff. It slows things down in the U.S. like you can't even believe. And the fact that we have this continental-sized economy, but we have 50 different company laws or corporation laws, to me is ridiculous. It's like our money transmitter law. I mean, 49 states have money transmitter law and different licensing requirements. We're giving up our biggest advantage, which is we're a huge geographical space under a capitalist democratic system. It's annoying. So I think it's going to be really difficult to get states to surrender their individual company law, but maybe we can kind of do an end run around that with a distributed autonomous corporation or company that operates on either a national or global basis. So. I think I probably missed one of your questions.
Very good. It's actually interesting what you're saying because in a free world, ideally, the good idea succeed, right, and become a good standard, but in a voluntary way. And I think it's also very dangerous to think that it's good to have only like one standard, which is imposed. I think it's better if it evolves, right? If people have the freedom to choose. There is a project called ULEX on the side, and we actually have an event tonight for that. And what they're doing is also using blockchain and new technologies to make an open source law, an open source legal system. where everybody can contribute, and the best can be successful, basically. And that could maybe also evolve, into a global standard. Why not? I mean, today everybody knows, at least for the time being, cars are awesome, right? And the technology is successful because it offers value to people, and people like it. And that's also what we see with this is the whole disruption, right, of Bitcoin. That the disruption happened without asking anyone for permission. So it just happened, and the market decides, hey, that's interesting, that's cool, let's do it. And now in China, they're cracking down, and still, I think the business is still there, right? Like people see the benefit. And also, when we speak about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is just a product, a digital item that you can't really regulate, right? It's global, as you said, and what you want to talk about, it's just there. Do you think that this is really the big thing, the big shift that is happening, that we come from a few people decide what's going to happen to know the whole community can program and can contribute and can make proposals, and it's much more competitive, basically, that better ideas have it easier to be adopted?
Okay, so as usual, you said several good things, and I'll try to parse it out. Number one, I'd say Bitcoin was never unregulated. It's always been regulated. Everything's always regulated. The question is, can you effectively apply those regulations? Mm-hmm. And also, are the regulators, it's kind of a related thing, are the regulators aware of the thing that's happening? So the law is very broad, and at least in the United States, and I think many other countries also, they don't specify the names of things. They specify sort of subjective categories of things. And Bitcoin is got to be either money, a commodity, a security, or good or service, or some hybrid combination of those things. And separate from its name, the fact that it has those characteristics and has that functionality means that's going to fall underneath some regulatory regime. Now, the next question is, does the regulator even know about it? That kind of gets you away from things for a little while, but by definition, once you become big, they'll know about it. The next question is, can regulators, if they know about it, can they impose their will on it? Now, I would say, Bitcoin can't be arrested, it can't be shot, you can't threaten its family, you can't tax it, you can't blackmail it. So Bitcoin itself, as a technology, can't be repressed, but it's used by humans, it's used by organizations, or else it doesn't even matter. And those humans and those organizations can be shot, and they can be put in jail, and they can be taxed, and they can be blackmailed. So it's not, you don't get an escape from this planet for free card when you use Bitcoin. The real question is, are you able to run your affairs in a way that's less visible to the enforcers? But between individuals and the U.S. government, I'm going to bet on the U.S. government enforcing. So I'd rather have the U.S. government convinced and play along, and we have a productive role and try to run around it. That's number one. Number two is China does what's in China's self-interest, and they're going to use Bitcoin and blockchain and everything else exactly as is in their interest, as they define it. And they don't get rushed by anyone, though they can move very fast when they want to. I think to the extent that Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrencies are a wealth generator, they want to generate wealth. If wealth is being generated, they want that wealth generated by parties in China that are loyal to the government and not parties that are against the government. For example, the princelings, the children or grandchildren of the original communist revolutionaries tend to have really strong positions in industry and technology and control. They probably want those people to benefit because they're going to use their wealth and power to support the government. I think also China is looking for, I used to say long term, but now I see medium term, or even short term. They want to undermine the US dollar and ideally replace it with their currency. And they're looking at tokenization and blockchain as potential ways of making the yen or yuan, however you say their currency, more powerful and capable of replacing the US dollar. But they got to be careful when they do that because they own huge amounts of US debt. So they can't have the dollar crash, but they want to keep on incrementally replacing it. So blockchain and crypto, I think, helps them serve that purpose, especially if they do it on in their infrastructure projects abroad. And there's, from a national competitive perspective, there's nothing wrong with them doing that. They should do that if they're China. Just like Russia, from their perspective, wants to not be dependent on the SWIFT banking system because that's a very U.S. centric. But all these countries, they're not going to be enthusiastic. They're not going to be for or against crypto based on the fact that it's neat. They can be for or against it based on what they perceive as their national self-interest, including the interests of their influential citizens. So I don't think, China's pursuing just like it's pursuing everything else. Like it's pursuing robotics and artificial intelligence and genetic engineering and laser weaponry and everything. It's looking for Chinese advantage. And it is what it is. Now, it may end up being to Chinese advantage to allow ICOs, but they're going to do it in a way that supports the Chinese agenda. And, the rest of us just need to deal with it because you have a large country with a huge economy with a ton of people who are very aggressive and very intelligent and are gathering a huge amount of wealth. And they've intentionally built those facts kind of quietly, but they did it. And now we need to comply. To your point, does crypto and blockchain allow small, decentralized, democratic action to be successful? More so than it used to be. I think so. I think the internet did that. It allowed people press freedoms that they didn't effectively have before. Before, you needed to own a printing press. Before, you needed to own a television station or a radio, and then it came within federal regulation or government regulation, and it was tough. The internet in general allowed sort of the democratization of power and communications and action. Does blockchain and crypto enhance that? I think it does. I mean, to the extent you have money no one can control or records that are perfectly correct all the time, you're giving more force to democratic action. But everyone's always talking about it's the end of nation states, it's the end of governments. Well, that's a good theory until you end up in jail. And then as long as the government has the ability to put you in jail or tax, it's there and you got to deal with it. So it's not that it gets rid of those things, it's that it makes it a little bit easier to effectively organize outside of government. It's not that decentralized is better than centralized, it's that every single thing we do calls for different solutions. And we just need to be flexible and have our brains on and working. So, everyone's just like, ooh, decentralization, ooh, distributed. And, when they're saying that instead of centralization or instead of concentration, they're taking an ideological, emotional point of view. What I suggest is you look at the problem you're trying to solve. You look at the range of available tools and use the tool that's applicable for the job. Now, if new technologies let you use new tools or let you use them more easily or lowers the cost or lets you do things you couldn't do before, that's fantastic. But that doesn't make it right for every single job.
If we put transactions on a public ledger, what could happen to those transactions that are not legitimate?
It's very rare to find something that's always positive and no negative, or always negative, no positive. I mean, you can say nuclear bombs are bad, but then again, they kept the peace between the U.S. and Russia for half a century. So I don't know what's bad. But blockchain has pros and it has cons. The pro is you have an unalterable record of what happened. The con is you have an unalterable record of what happened. So if you're concerned, I think privacy is a legitimate interest, and that whole line that government gives that if you have nothing to hide, you don't worry about privacy, I think is pardon my French, a bunch of bullshit. And you can tell it's a bunch of bullshit because when you use that same standard against government actors, in other words, you go to that senator and you reveal that senator's pornography history or financial records or something, all of a sudden they discover the need for privacy. All of a sudden they discover the Fifth Amendment. Well, look, if everything should be out in the open and no privacy, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? Why are you not choosing to testify? Why not let everyone search your computer? So, everyone feels that they should have privacy for themselves, but maybe not for the other guy. Well, with blockchain, especially public blockchain, especially if you have something where the parties are known, which is not the case with Bitcoin. Suppose your name and your personal identification number was on the blockchain, every transaction you did was associated with you. Well, I can see a lot of positive uses for that. I mean, you could prove ownership of certain assets. You could prove you paid your taxes. You can do a lot of things, but you would not be private. You wouldn't be anonymous, and it's an issue. And there's some things that are perfectly legal, but they're no one's business. They could be embarrassing, or you could have something where you're engaging in political activity that we want to protect, But when you lose your ability to act privately or anonymously because it's on a public blockchain, the government can crack down on you. I mean, we have these large authoritarian governments in the world, and if everything you did was on the blockchain, every movement you made, every word you spoke, every thought you had, then you lose privacy, you lose deniability, and the areas that despite what Justice Brandeis said, there is a use for shadows. I don't necessarily want everyone knowing my private business. So, you're right. There's a tension there. But that being said, when it comes to government and regulators and large business transactions, like government borrowing military secrets, just in terms of like commercial projects, has no business keeping most things private. Those things should be on the public blockchain. They should be subject to audit. Public companies should, to a certain extent, be subject to audit. They've chosen to take advantage of certain public goods, and so they should make their information accessible to the public. It's different from private citizens.
If you look in the history of the internet, it unfolded and unchained an enormous potential for cross-border, borderless commerce. And also here in the beginning, people were concerned that people could use the internet for illicit actions. And then it turned out it was mass adopted that people use it for sharing cat videos and family videos and just go shopping, and shop on Amazon and stuff like that. And now, in a similar way, people are afraid that Bitcoin can be used for bad actions. But ultimately, at least the people that I talk to, most of them, so they just go, buy shopping, go spend it, or like the idea. So, do you think we were too afraid, in a similar way, like they were afraid of the internet?
Honestly, no. So I'm a fan of technology, and I think that part of life and part of moving forward is taking risks. And sometimes you need to take a lot of risk and be very aggressive, and people get hurt, and maybe that's what needs to happen for humanity to move forward. But we shouldn't fool ourselves. The internet can be used and has been used for bad purposes. And a lot of the applications that are built on top of it, even though they're great, get used for bad purposes. The money laundering and terrorist communication and finances and drug trade and abusive pornography and child porn and all of that stuff just got a lot easier because of the internet. Very aggressive political movements, whether you like them or not. Some of them have some good things to say, but some of them are a little crazy. Got empowered because of the internet. My feeling of that stuff is sort of like let the chips fall where they may, because we need the internet. The internet on the net has been good for humanity, but there's consequences to it, just like there's consequences to not doing it. So it is a mixed bag. One of the first things that drove Bitcoin adoption was ransomware, because people found all their files encrypted and they could only make a payment with cryptocurrency. And because cryptocurrency can't really be traced in the way that regular cash or credit card payments can be traced, it became possible to impose ransoms in a way that you couldn't before and have automated systems doing all this. Though it's not all great, but I think our job is to be enthusiastic advocates for the platform and for the potential of it. Recognize the risks. Do everything we can within reason, I should say, to control those risks, but keep on pushing forward. The way I put it, it's like working with genes. I mean, on one hand, working with genes can allow us maybe to live forever or have better lives or become resistant to certain diseases or solve, let people live who would never have survived before. I mean, that's all positive. When you do genetic research, you're also enabling a world where you can have super viruses, where you can have bacteria that attack people based on their race or their location. I mean, you can develop a bacteria that kills someone just because they have a certain color of skin. So all these things are two-edged swords. And it's normal and youthful to get enthusiastic about this stuff until it kind of lands in your front door, and then you're like, oops. And then, of course, it's too late because it's out there. But again, first of all, we don't have a choice, because the way technology works is the world is so diverse, and because we have no consistent law, because nations are competing with each other, everyone, even if you wanted to hold back from adopting these things, you can't, because if you don't do something that gives you a competitive advantage against someone else, they'll beat you. And we're not in necessarily a friendly world. We're in a world where nations and people and everyone else competes in order to survive. So we're driven to adopt these technologies even before handle all the risks. But you still act like adults and kind of think about this stuff. So I'm here for being aggressive. I'm here for risk taking, but I also want to have a realistic view of this stuff. Part of what I'm trying to do with cryptocurrency and blockchain is I don't want to hold it back at all. I want it to power forward. And I think part of what lets it power forward is addressing the real risks that are inherent to it. it had a correspondent relationship with a U.S. bank, and the U.S. bank actually cut the correspondent relationship because of money laundering concerns with the Estonian branch. So this is not news. I mean, it was to actually cut a correspondent relationship, or correspondent bank relationship, is a big deal. And the Estonian branch knew about the fact that this relationship got killed. It's not like this is not news. Then apparently there was some recognition that there was money laundering. It got up to higher levels. I think there was a government investigation. I think there was an internal audit that happened maybe 6 months ago. Now, if you look at what I pointed out yesterday online, is if you look at the stock, Danske Bank stock 6 months ago, it began to go down, right? But look what happened on September 19th, quite recently. Danske Bank's law firm produced, I think it was an 85-page report about what was going on with the Estonian branch. And I believe, I'm still reading through the document, but it looks like they've absolved the directors of Danske Bank. I mean, isn't that convenient? And maybe it's a whitewash document. Maybe they're just kind of, doing, like, pretending to do some kind of self-review, but not really. I need to read it more carefully. I can't say for sure that's true. But the timing is very funny, because if you look at Danske Bank stock, it started a 6-month slide, and then the past couple of weeks or so, or past month or so, yeah, it's off a little bit, but the big hit happened before. So I think the insiders are bailing out, and then decided to kind of go public with this. Now the CEO of the bank has resigned finally. The chief compliance officer, I found him on LinkedIn, still has an active profile. I mentioned that online. I think it's Mr. Jorgensen. On his LinkedIn, he says he's on gardening leave, which is an English term for between jobs. And now he's traveling with his family. So that must be nice for him. I think he came on around 2014, if I remember correctly, 2015, and just resigned in September. Well, I bet he resigned. But the bulk of what happened seems to have happened between 2007 and 2015. I mean, that's a good stretch of time. I mean, that's enough time to get billions of dollars out. And I made the point before, when you're talking $234 billion, there are dead bodies involved with this. There's no way that you're moving $234 billion of dark money without people dying. It's just too much. So whether it's drug dealing or political violence or shady payoffs or illicit goods, I mean, somewhere around, either directly involved in this or around us, there's bodies. I mean, it's not trivial. This money almost certainly wasn't taxed. This is money that, if you believe in imposing sanctions on Russia, assuming you do, then, this is ways that they were able to get around those systems. And who knows where that money went? Did it go to some country's nuclear program? Did Iran put the money in Russia and then take it out through Estonia? I don't know. And none of us know. So, here we are trying to figure this out. And like most, it's not like the U.S. is so pure. I mean, this reminds me of 2008, where everyone goes, "Oh gosh, we had no idea this was happening," or "No, it's so serious. It was just with this one little branch that was causing problems." Well, that's like when Barclays Bank went belly up, because I think you had that rogue trader who did all the trades. People didn't look that closely because it looked like he was making money. Well, if $234 billion is going through Estonia, I'm sure people were making money, and it shows a real problem. So, getting back to blockchain and cryptocurrency, I think $234 billion. I mean, I don't know what the total market cap of the cryptocurrency market is, but it's got to be around that, or the amount of money laundered puts the cryptocurrency markets or any individual coins, maybe other than Bitcoin, to shame. And this happened with a bank from Denmark, European Union, NATO. They're not on the euro; they use their own currency, but they're part of the European rate mechanism. I think ERM2. I'm sure they're part of the Basel banking accords. I'm sure that they had a compliance officer, and guess what? None of it helped. I mean, this thing went on for, I guess, 8 years, and this is massive. What if they had been on Ripple or cryptocurrency or blockchain? Would this have happened? I don't know. But if it did happen, if someone said, "Oh my gosh, cryptocurrency allows $234 billion of money laundering," well, guess what? That just happened with regular money. So the corruption standard on the current system is pretty high. I mean, you have to get really corrupt to match the current levels of corruption. So I kind of laugh when these guys, I don't laugh because I understand where they're coming from, but I have to smirk to myself when all these government agencies, try to act wise and raise their eyebrows and poo-poo cryptocurrency. It's not that they're, like I said, it's not that the concerns are illegitimate. Okay, I have these concerns. I do. Like, I care about terrorist financing. I care about drug trade. I care about child prostitution. But to pretend that the current system doesn't facilitate these bad things on a massive scale is a joke. I mean, it's clearly a joke. That's $234 billion. I mean, that's a nice house.
You can't really believe these numbers. It's impossible. It's incredible because if you're a startup, you work maybe on a seed round funding of 50K, 150K or something. Imagine how many startups you could build of this instead of financing terrorism or stuff. I'm so amazed by the sheer number. But also, the audience, the viewers can draw their own conclusions. I would ask you, do you think there will be, you mentioned that the law firm is already maybe covering it with their report, basically. Will there ever be a proper investigation that will lead to results so that we can identify where the money went and stuff like that? Or will it be just, it will be forgotten after a few weeks? What are the legal implications? Will they lose a license? Will it go down? Or is it actually, I feel like from what you researched, also with the stock going down years before, this is a game that no normal person basically can play because it's on such a high level. So isn't this really a complete elitist game, an insider game there?
Yeah. So again, I'm doing this from memory a little bit. I'm still looking into this, but the Danish Financial Authority apparently investigated, closed their investigation, and now reopened their investigation. So that's something. I think Britain, UK has the National Crime Agency, the NCA. And again, I'm just getting into this stuff myself. I think they just opened up an investigation of British front companies that were using this. So there are investigations happening. I wouldn't say that the law firm's covering things up exactly, because it's more like, I think if I'm reading this report correctly, and again, I need to read it again or look more carefully, I think it's more of a question of framing and defining the issues in a way that benefits their client, that's kind of a legitimate lawyer function. If half the battle is framing the issues in a certain way, or if you don't like the conversation, change the subject. It's what lawyers do, but it's our job as people outside to then yell at them and hold them accountable and not let them be able to do that. So they're earning their fee, and I look forward to making them embarrassed because of that. Was this insider job? You don't move $234 billion without a ton of people. People had to get paid off. Right? It's not like people. I'm sure discovered this, brought it to the superiors. The superiors were making money, and the superiors had to share a percentage of this in order to keep everyone quiet. That's what happens. And then once you're a little bit dirty, you keep on getting more dirty because you can't admit what you did. You have to keep on playing along with it. So I think, these things take on a life of their own. And, I'm sure with the Russian mafia, the first time you launder money, it probably feels fun because you get your percentage and you're like, wow, look how neat I am. But then once they know who you are and who your family is and can start to threaten you if you don't keep on doing it, I think that it probably gets a lot more, it probably becomes unpleasant really quickly. That's why I always tell people, when a bunch of Russians are promising to meet you in Monaco with $1 million in cash, that's not the meeting you want to take. And just to be super clear, I think I'm learning Russian. I love Russia as a country. I think Putin's very clever. I have to appreciate his geopolitical skill. I have one foot in Ukraine, one foot in Russia, another foot in the US. It's like I traverse between these worlds, but you need to accept reality and deal with it. And there's it's clear that people were in on it. The probably government was in on it also. You just had a money laundering scandal with a Latvian bank, where it was. I think.
Follow-up question: like, are there other banks also that you know of, or in the past? Is this a systemic problem, or is this really like a single incident now? And maybe a second question. So with if I do a Bitcoin transaction, it is public, it is traceable. Wouldn't you say Bitcoin is already a feasible solution to counter those problems? And maybe last question. What I hear a lot on conferences from banks, actually, banks promote AML policies and strong regulation. Isn't this a farce in the end? If these banks promote AML policies, but have a lot of problems themselves, and it doesn't seem to help, whereas Bitcoin is basically without regulation at the moment, and still more transparent and easier to prohibit such, or to see such things.
Right. So, two questions. I have mixed feelings about this. So, on one hand, AML and KYC are, I think, stopping several legitimate companies and people from doing the business that they should be doing. For example, banks will arbitrarily close accounts because they're de-risking the account, and they will close accounts for businesses that are crypto related, even if they're perfectly legitimate. In fact, there's an interesting Israeli case where the Israeli Supreme Court forced Bank Leumi to reopen up an account that they had arbitrarily closed. I think it's like the bits of gold case. I think that's actually great. I read recently that France is passing an ICO law where they're also guaranteeing the banking for these crypto companies. And they're like, France, really? France? But God bless the French that they're doing this. Obviously Malta's making some forward movement here. So on one hand, AML KYC is a burden for those who are entrepreneurial and it gives the banks an excuse to close down accounts for those they don't like, just like the Patriot Act does. On the other hand, the anniversary of 9/11, and I was alive and aware and watching TV when 9/11 happened. Those people had money transferred to them. Now, it wasn't much, but it was through the banking system, and a lot of these laws came into place in response to 9/11. You had the Patriot Act and all this other good stuff. I think AML, it's a lot harder to launder money now than it used to be, and the know your customer requirements serve some purpose. And the fact that you need to reveal the beneficial owners of companies and not just go by the corporate name, that all helps. Now, the problem is anytime you set a standard, you immediately make it so that people not necessarily comply with the standard, but they need to show that they're complying with the standard, which is two separate things. It's one thing to comply with it, and another thing to show that you're complying with it. And sometimes you can show you're in compliance while actually missing the point of compliance. That's number one. Number two, it becomes sort of a ceiling. Once you have a standard in place, then people sort of go to that point and they stop. They don't go further. And I think no matter what system you put in place, you cannot replace good people who are motivated to support the law and do a good job. You cannot replace individual people and individual ethics. Now, you can, and sometimes the standards get in the way of those good people, but it's a balance. You can't have this world where you don't have standards either. So, I don't think AML and KYC is a joke. I think when done correctly, it's extremely powerful. But like everything else, there's pros and cons, and you need to tweak the system because it's complex. Is it a farce? I don't think it's a farce in general. But when you think there's that I think it's from Hamlet. Something's rotten in Denmark. Denmark is one of the last places I would perceive corruption, and Estonia also. But probably because it was one of the last places you look for corruption is the fact they got away with it. I mean, if this was some scary country that is a money laundering black hole, they never would have gotten this far. But it's Denmark, it's Estonia. They follow the law, and they're this and they're that. So nothing replaces having a brain and having ethics and having morals and checking on things. Now, to your point about Bitcoin and traceability. Bitcoin is fully traceable in the sense that you can see every transaction that ever happened since the Genesis block. But of course, Bitcoin is somewhat anonymous because you're going off of wallet IDs. You're not going off individual IDs. So it's not truly, it's auditable in terms of transactions. It's not auditable in terms of identity yet. Now, the question is, do you want it to be? And the answer is, I don't know. It depends. Depends on the situation. There's always, every system has people who are trying to figure out how to mess with that system. So if you have blockchain, you're gonna have people who are figuring out how to mess with that system. But you at least wouldn't, you would at least have something more public, more audible, more checkable. You could set more red flags. You couldn't hide things quite as well. So I think properly deployed blockchain can alleviate issues like money laundering. Now, here's another little tidbit. I mean, just as an anecdote, things cut both ways. I mean, when you have the Silk Road darknet market, and Ross Ulbricht, Dread Pirate Roberts, he got taken down in part because Bitcoin transactions can be traced in certain ways. There's ways to spy on the Bitcoin network and see where money's flowing and see who's doing what. It's not as anonymous as people think it is. Maybe Zcash is more anonymous and using dark wallets. But I don't know. It's just an interesting new world. But I can't take seriously big banks and big regulators who only talk about the dangers of cryptocurrency and blockchain without addressing the flaws in the current system. That they lose all credibility with me when they do that. They need to talk about the flaws and benefits of the current system, the flaws and benefits of what's possible going forward, and then figure out the optimal mix of those things without being romantic about it.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting talk, Gordon. I wonder if you see the nature of disruption in Bitcoin and blockchain, this permissionless innovation, like open source, everybody can fork, constant innovation. Do you think it's time, or is there a way maybe to also look at regulation in a more innovative way, so that we just maybe have to think out of the box, or maybe there are complete new ideas and concepts to make it safer? Do you think that's time, or there are approaches that people maybe also can make money finding solutions?
So here's the thing, like the term permissionless innovation sounds good until someone builds a virus in their backyard. It sounds good, right? Or it sounds good until they find a new way to transmit kiddie porn or something. I think permissionless innovation is a good catchword. What they're really saying is that the law hasn't gotten around to regulating this thing yet, so we're going to do stuff. Now, I'm a fan of that. Between not having innovation, having innovation, I want innovation, and I don't want to sound like some stodgy old dude. It's like I am okay with causing limited amounts of harm when you innovate. Okay, that's a whole life. Let's not pretend this expression of do no harm, which is what doctors live by. That doesn't work with technology. You can do harm. Okay, you're supposed to do harm. Experiments that don't work are in a sense harm because they're wasting resources. And Uber, is it harming taxis? Well, I hope so, because I freaking hate taxis. All right, and so it's okay with me. I want to cause harm. I want chemotherapy to harm cancer. And it's all right. But it's just, and I think Uber had this expression, move fast and break things. Well, that works for a while until you start getting into lawsuits because you start breaking people who didn't choose to be part of your system. The issue, it's one thing if you innovate in an area and everyone participating in your innovation chose to participate. So if you have an untested drug, for example, or a drug that's not regulated, but can potentially cure cancer, and people know the full danger of taking that drug and they choose to take it, I'm kind of smile at that stuff and support it. But the problem with law is that law should apply to everyone. You don't opt into law. You don't say, yes, I agree to this series of laws. I don't agree to this one. If you live in a country, you live in a place, you're automatically subject to that law. And not knowing that law doesn't save you. So when you have permissionless innovation in law, well, I want to be, in democracy is permissioned innovation in the law, permissioned by the people I voted for, who theoretically are voting now on my behalf, and I can not vote for next time if I don't like what they do. So the whole point of democracy is that our actors, our leaders are permissioned. It's not that they're not permissioned, but they have permission to be in parliament. They have permission to be the prime minister. And if they don't act the way I like, I'll take away their permission. So I think I'd rather have that. I think the problem with the EU and maybe to a certain extent with the United States is that we have all these bureaucrats who, you need bureaucracy, you need administrative agencies. Life is just too complex to leave it up to the Congress or the presidency or judiciary. But you have, especially I think in the case of the EU, you have the democratic deficit because the process of getting these people into power and what they're doing is so hidden away from the public. You know, you can say that right now the EU has permissionless innovation. It's just not the innovation by the people we want to be doing it. I mean, when you have a bureaucrat in Brussels setting some new stupid standard that no one else that actually is affected by it knows about it, they're not doing it with permission. They're just kind of doing it, and now we have to live with it. I mean, that's kind of what caused Brexit. So I think you make an argument that government laws maybe should be, you know, especially on an international basis, should almost be like open standards, like TCP/IP, where you put out the law, you have a request for comment, you battle back and forth, you put it on a test net, you try it out. If people like it, maybe they can opt into it. You can kind of gradually adopt and upload. I mean, I think there's a model there, but I guess that's my thought on it. You know, like permissionless, you know, it's a good catchphrase, just like move fast and break things is a good catchphrase until that driverless car slams into some innocent old lady and kills her. So I guess I'm just saying, just be aware of the consequences of the actions, both positive and negative. Don't be down, don't be negative, but just think of everything through.
Mm-hmm. We talk about the problems a lot. It's definitely, I think the upside, the good side is that we have enough material for very good thrillers and high level banking thrillers. There will be some good movies, maybe. Maybe just as a
you actually point something out to me. I want, you know, I always have to be kind of, I need to be thoughtful when I talk about this stuff. It's my cautionary statements are because I want blockchain and crypto to succeed. It's not because I'm against it. It's because I want to succeed. And I also know how the regulators and existing businesses think. And I want to proactively and productively address their concerns and not ignore them. But I don't want to make them, I don't want to give them the right to say no. But just because I don't want to give them the right to say no, that doesn't mean they don't have some good things to say. So I want, that's kind of why I'm speaking along these lines. The flip side is the whole reason I went back to practicing law is not because I want to make $1 billion with crypto, but because I think that these technologies have the power to really push humanity forward quickly and to really benefit a lot of people and to get us to Mars and to get us the robots we need and to solve all these problems, all these, to bring banking to everyone, to democratize societies. I mean, it is powerful, heady stuff. And my passion for it drives my concern for making sure it's done right, because I don't want it to get delayed. I want it to happen as quickly as possible. And so as quickly as possible means being strategic and aggressive and striking out at things that can slow it down, because I want it to move faster, because I want humanity to move faster. Make sense?
Yes, makes absolute sense. And actually, I don't have nothing to add on that. Thank you so much, Gordon, for this insightful interview. And I say also thank you for watching. Buy Bitcoin, be free, no financial advice, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.